Not so still life. Woo! All right, so here we are moving into the next project. I'm super excited about this one. This is a fun one. We're moving out of the world of abstract design or abstract art, and we're moving into the world of surrealism. Surrealism is a type of artwork that started way back when there was an artist named Salvador Dali and many other artists that wanted to do realistic artwork, but with a twist in it. As you can clearly see in this picture here, there's a definite twist, right? So it's taking the real and making it kind of strange or supernatural or just all kinds of weird twists to it. So I'm super excited about this project. There's a lot that we're going to use from the last project, but there's also a lot that we're going to gain for this project. So some of the terms that you're going to be hearing in this are repetition from the last lesson, but we're going to be adding just a few that these terms are going to be terms that you're going to follow. They're going to follow you all the way through this entire class. So, and if you ever take my class again, then it's just going to be something that you're going to hear some of these terms over and over and over again. All right. So here we go. Let's get into this project. I'm super excited about it. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. So as you can see, the project is, in fact, a realistic drawing. It's done in black and white because we're still just working on just shading on this one, all right? So we really want to focus on this. We don't want to have to introduce color, but that does add a little bit of a challenge for this project. The challenge is then we kind of have to figure out how we can direct the viewer's attention to our focal point. I think it's kind of easy because once you start adding objects or a group of objects, then you're going to end up getting something like a focal point, right? So I think that should kind of just end up falling in line for you naturally. Things that we have to make sure that we're remembering as we're doing this project, we really are working on that value scale still, right? Trying to get 1 through 10, so white through black, and more than that, working on that smooth gradation, right? So you want the gradients to be really smooth. So if you're looking at this picture, I think the apple is a fantastic example of smooth gradation. You have a really nice dark core shadow at the bottom, and then as it comes up, it lightly changes into the separate values, right? But there's a gradient. It's all smoothly there. There's no clear separation between each value, right? So we're still trying to stick to that. Don't forget contrast. Contrast is so important, right? Remember, contrast is how I can take my artwork and set it out above all of the other artworks, right? So if we're in a gallery and you're looking at all of these paintings, the piece that has the most contrast is almost always likely the piece that's going to grab your eye first, right? So historically, whenever we have art shows, we have judges come in. The pieces that win the art shows are the pieces that initially grab the judge. And those pieces are always high in contrast, right? So for this project, as you can see, we are doing a still life of sorts. A still life would be something really basic. I'm just going to pick up some random things here. So it would be literally something as basic as like, here I am with my cell phone and this roll of tape. And there's a still life, right? Something really simple. A still life wouldn't necessarily be that bird in the background. But for the sake of this project, it's not such a still life, right? So it's a not so still life project, which means you can definitely add things. However, the very base of your project has to come with small inanimate objects, okay? Inanimate meaning they're not alive, right? So I don't have my pet turtle walking across the thing and I'm trying to draw it, right? So that wouldn't work for this project. But very basic. It could be literally anything you want. Go to your closet, pick up a shoe, draw the shoe, right? And if you struggle with drawing from life, I understand that. It doesn't really bother me for you to use your cell phone to take an image of that, right? So you can take a picture of your still life and have that ready to go. Then you got to figure out what you're going to put that still life in, right? So if we go back to this previous slide, they took this still life and they didn't do anything really strange with it, but they just put it on, top of this beautiful landscape, right? It's really beautiful. There's a really wonderful value scale happening here. And this project would definitely have met the specs. By the way, these projects are definitely not student works here. These are, professional works, but I'll show you some student works here in just a little bit. All right, so I definitely would say that some of my students in the past could have done this for sure. You'll see in my student examples that this is absolutely something that they could have done. It's a beautiful work. They've met the contrast need, and they've worked really extensively with the value scale. I love it. All right, so introducing a new term here. This is a term that I really love. I use it a ton in artwork, and it is so, so important whenever I'm trying to create realistic proportions, right? Trying to help my piece actually look proportionate and normal, not strange and stretched out and wonky and all over the place, right? So the word is plumb lines, as you can see there. So the word plumb line is really, really simple. If you want to go back in history, you can think about the use of something called a plumb bob, right? So it would be a weight with a string attached to it. And this is something that they actually would use to create an alignment between one object and another object. How do we use that inside of, drawing? We use that to help out. So the example would be right here. If I'm looking at the apple, how does it align with the bottle? Well, it's really, really simple, right? So if I click here, there you go. So you can see that beautiful plumb line. That plumb line, a horizontal plumb line, really is useful because it tells me the absolute height of that apple in regards or in proportion to that bottle, right? So we can see that from the top of the apple to the line on that bottle is a perfect line. So then what I would do is I could draw my apple in, or maybe in this situation, you're probably going to start with something like the bottle. I would draw the bottle in, and then I could use a plumb line from that line on the label of the bottle straight over and figure out how tall that apple is. So it's going to help me make sure that that apple is not huge or the same size of the bottle, or way too small and not even realistic in terms of the apple compared to the bottle, right? So horizontal plumb lines are really useful, but vertical plumb lines are also just as useful, right? So if I'm looking at this bottle alone, that vertical plumb line does a lot for me. One, it helps me kind of split that bottle in half so that I can have even halves, and I can actually break the bottle down into kind of more simple shapes, right? Seeing the two halves. So that's really useful. But it also helps me kind of line up things like the watch to the apple. Where's it at? If I'm looking at this, it may not line up exactly with an object on the bottle, but that watch absolutely lines up with the center line of the of the bottle. So that's really, really useful. So I have my vertical plumb line that tells me where I should start that watch at. And then I can use the vertical plumb line off to the side. Over here, you would see this. I could use a vertical plumb line there that would tell me how far out the watch goes, right? So many things there that are really, really useful. Then this is a plumb line that I don't often use a lot, especially for my amateur artists, but it is something that could be useful. If you could master using a plumb line, then this would be a really great way to use the plumb line. So the diagonal plumb line. Basically, a diagonal plumb line is tough because you're having to figure out, the angle of that diagonal. So that's where the challenge comes in. So instead of using it really in that manner, what I like to do is to visualize my diagonal plumb lines to help me kind of break down the basic shape. So the example would be, what is this shape inside of, between the bottle and the apple, right? So that kind of helps me break it down into basic triangles. You can see here it's a nice, little acute triangle, right? Or I guess that would be a 90-degree triangle. So really, really useful. And I think that you can definitely use it, but you want to make sure that you're using that kind of as like a last resort. Really stick with those basic straight plumb lines, right? Horizontal and vertical. So that's really kind of where that is. So as you progress in this, you got to figure out, what does the whole piece look like? Do I need an entire, drawing? Does it have to be extensive, with a massive background and all of these different things? Does it have to be a fully complete composition? The answer to that is question mark. I don't know. I think that becomes a preference to the artist. Does this picture really need a background? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I think historically students have said, yeah, I think it would be good with the background. Some kids have said, no, I think it's fine without the background. Without the background, there's a clear contrast happening, so there's success there. It is this random shoe made up of old men floating in the abyss. So if it were me, I think maybe I would at least just attach it to the ground with like a cast shadow, and I'd probably call it good. I like the contrast. So that comes to you, the preference for you. What extent do you want the background to be? While you always remember that the background cannot take away or detract from the foreground or that focus, the focal point that you're looking for, right? So if we go all the way back to the apple in the vase setting on the water, that background can't take away from the apple in the vase. It's a beautiful landscape. Really, it's kind of got to direct me to that, or I need to make sure that my focal point or my emphasis is much higher in contrast and grabs the viewer's attention, right? So it makes it more comfortable to view. So simple backgrounds obviously are going to work here. You don't have to have a big complex background. It can literally just be a value. Now, you got to make sure that you remember that contrast. I think this piece is successful, but it's some of the background kind of blends with the foreground. So what could they have done to adjust that? I don't know. It's kind of again, it's one of those, like, you have to be in that work to understand it. I think here you might lighten the background a little bit more, or even potentially, lighten some of the stuff in the foreground, because as you are thinking about values, it's really important that you understand that light values tend to pop out and dark values tend to sink in. So the darker it is, the deeper it's going to be. The lighter it is, the more it's going to stand out. So if I'm looking at an object that's in the front and I add highlights to it or really strong whites, it's probably going to pop out. That's probably going to be a useful thing to know. All right, so make sure that you're sticking with unity. Remember that word, unity, where all things flow together, right? So make sure you have that natural flow happening inside of your piece, right? So it's really, really simple to get unity. Just remember, what do I use? Repetition. Repetition is going to help you make unity so easy. So if we're looking at this piece, again, what we're seeing here would be, the use of the leaves. They're being repeated. You have the leaves up top. You have the leaves falling. You have the leaves on the bottom. You even have a leaf stuffed in a page over here, right? That creates unity. My eye literally will naturally flow from the leaves all the way around the picture. It brings me to that central focal point that is really high in contrast. Just as I told you, it's lighter, so it's standing out. It's popping out, right? I think it's really, really useful. And make sure that you're, sticking to that concept of unity. Make sure that it's comfortable to look at. So here's a nice piece. Again, they used unity. They're working different things. You have the butterfly repetition. You have butterflies flying in the background. You have the butterfly on the book. Anytime you put a person inside of an image, it's going to absolutely create this idea of a focal point, because naturally we just want to look at people. By the way, you don't have to use people in this at all. You can just kind of go with it. They can be aliens. They can be whatever you want. There doesn't even have to be an animated object inside of this project. It can all be solely still life. It's your choice, really, where you go with this. So here's a couple of examples of my students in the past that I think they had a really good time with this, and I think they did pretty well with this. So this was a piece that was done by, I think she was a freshman at the time. I think it's really successful. It's really good. She did the whole ship in the bottle idea. She tried to work the bottle. This is a perspective issue. It's kind of challenging to draw that because it's looking right at us, right? So it's foreshortened, which means that it's pointing right at us. So like this, instead of, seeing it from the side. But she hit the value scale really nice. She didn't have to overkill the value. She left the background white. I'm okay with that. It doesn't bother me. It definitely would create a smaller amount of space inside of the picture. If you have a really bright background, it's going to bring that background forward. But I think it's a successful piece. So looking at this one, he went way outside of the box, and he didn't really stick to that traditional still life at all. His still life, and he got away with this, he kind of broke the rules. He said, can I just use these light bulbs, this cool light bulb, as a still life? I was like, that's a cool idea. I can go with that. And he said, can I do that and repeat that light bulb? I said, well, anytime you use repetition, that's great because it creates unity, right? And so he has this wonderful setup, this wonderful composition where my eye naturally flows from piece to piece to piece inside of it, right? So my eye goes from the bulbs all the way through, and then he's really worked with the contrast here, making sure that my eyes are going to the bulbs because of the highlight that's happening around the bulbs. The brightness and the moth up front helps me focus on that primarily, and then he just kind of did a really basic value scale in the background, which is called a vignette, where it's like darkening out in the background and then kind of lighting as it comes to the center. Success. I'm super happy with this piece. And this piece is obviously a little more advanced. I think it's a really great piece. You've got the basic still life happening there with the vase and the flowers. This girl, I'm going to tell you, she set up all of her own photos. You can definitely do that, and I would prefer that. You can steal some photos from the internet. I'm okay with that. However, I need to make sure that you understand that you cannot take someone's photo absolutely and draw it line for line and call it your own. That's called copyright. It's illegal. Don't get into that world, okay? It's a dangerous world to run down, and you don't want it to happen at all, okay? So this girl set up all of her own photos. Obviously, she didn't have a human heart, so she did steal the human heart from the internet. She just looked up a scientific, example of a human heart, and voila, there you go. So that's her hand. These are her flowers. This is a vase that she found in my class, and then she actually took a picture of a chunk of wood. Great value scale. She hit it 1 through 10. I love the dark in the background. If you can really, if you can tell here, it's clearly sinking that background, right? Everything is really sinking. She used perspective in the wood grain. So all of the wood grain is not just kind of chopping backwards. It's actually going back in perspective. We're not quite there yet. That's going to come eventually. So don't worry too much about that. This is a kid who's done this project multiple times. A lot of success here. Bright whites in the foreground, really making everything pop out. This is success. So here's the deal. Not so still life. You need to find any kind of inanimate object that you can. I don't care. Pencils, here we go. Shading stumps, your cell phone, a roll of tape, your shoes, a water bottle. I don't care what you use. Find some kind of inanimate object. Do something strange with it. Put it where it doesn't belong. Add something weird to it. Animate it. I don't care. You can make it animated. You do what you want with this project, but that's where it's at. Don't forget the value scale. Make sure that you have contrast. Make sure that you have unity. And hey, don't forget that beautiful term plumb line. If you're struggling with proportion, plumb lines will get me there. All right? Lining up one object with another with a straight line is going to help me figure out where this object is in relation to this object. All right. Good luck creating this. I'm looking forward to see it. Go forth, do art, and be awesome.